Thank you so much to everyone for joining us in today's webinar. Really pleased to be welcoming Helen Crampin, Innovation Lead at Innovate UK, joining us today, talking about a competition that they're launching at the moment, which is, I think, £4 million for healthy ageing initiatives. We know there's lots of social enterprises across Scotland that kind of deal with all aspects of kind of healthy ageing, and I know you'll perhaps touch on some of the broadness in terms of the competition, but I think it will be of interest to quite a number of our attendees today in terms of looking at, you know, how can they know more about the competition, what could they do in terms of applying, hopefully. So I know you're going to run us through everything that it's looking at, some of the deadlines and some of the what you're looking for. And what we'll do in our usual ways, if you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat function as we go through, or post things in the Q&A, and I will put questions to Helen once we've heard from her in terms of her presentation. So without holding you back anymore, I will ask you if you want to start your presentation, Helen, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I was just saying about the weather, I'm actually blinded by the sun here, so I do apologise. I'll just get my presentation up and running. Okay, so yes, thanks Naomi. As Naomi said, I'm Helen Crampin. I'm one of the innovation leads for the Healthy Ageing Challenge at Innovate UK. I'm going to give you a quick overview of our aims as a challenge, and then I'm going to talk about obviously the SBRI funding call for social ventures, which actually has opened on the 19th of July. And I'm going to touch upon the Investor Partnerships Programme really briefly as well, which I also run. So who are we, for those of you who don't know us? The Healthy Ageing Challenge is supporting businesses that work on solutions for people as they age. And we're also seeking to address social inequalities. We are looking for businesses that are developing products, solutions, and also services. So I keep stressing this to everybody. We're very, very interested in service-led businesses as well as products and services. Products and solutions, sorry. So we've got 7 core themes, and these are the eligibility scope. These are the things we are expecting businesses to be looking at. Okay, these are where we're expecting you to be working. This is one of the exciting things about this challenge is as you can see, our themes cover a really broad range of sectors. So it's given us some great scope to work with lots of different businesses. SBRI, I'm not going to talk about in huge detail. We are using it as a vehicle, and we're using it for a number of reasons. It's very agile and flexible. And the main reason we're using SBRI is that it gets 100% funding into businesses. So this isn't a standard grant funding call where we would expect businesses to come with match funding. This is 100% funding as it's a procurement vehicle mechanism. Okay. So there's a large focus on research and development throughout the programme, as you'd expect. And obviously the purpose is to develop solutions that are meeting the challenges and the themes that I've just outlined in the previous slide. The purpose is obviously to create a market and demand in healthy ageing. And one of the things that we found over the past 18 months is that we know social ventures and social enterprises are doing this already. They just find it very, very difficult to access funding. So that's one of the reasons that we've done it in this way. So again, you know, why social ventures? As I've just said, we know social ventures are delivering products and services to the people that we are trying to help. And we know that they have many barriers to accessing funding and investment. I work with commercial investors on the Investor Partnership Scheme, and we've been trying to encourage those investors to work a little bit differently, but they're still reluctant to invest in social enterprises for lots of different reasons. Now, one of the reasons I get really excited about working with social enterprises is that the founders most often have lived experience, and also the people that work with them. So this just gives them a really unique insight into the market that they're trying to address. It just makes them extremely different and unique to work with. I'm not going to go through these bullet points because for you guys who are on the call, I'm sure you're really familiar with the barriers that you face to funding. And, my understanding of the commercial landscape that I've been working with over the past 2 years now has also shown me that because of it's slightly risky. So traditional investors just see this as a risky environment to be funding. So that's another reason that we've decided to do this. So what are we looking for? We're obviously looking for social enterprises, and if you are a social enterprise or a social venture, you know that you are a social enterprise or a social venture. We've got quite strict criteria that you have to meet. We've got some businesses, I've been asked this question, am I a social venture? If you have to ask that question, then you're not a social venture, okay? We are looking for businesses who have a lead customer in place. For the smaller feasibility projects, this lead customer can be somebody you're talking to or have an agreement with in principle. For the bigger projects, we would expect you to have those customers in place already and bring those with you. And those customers can be anybody. They can be local authorities, they can be NHS, they can be social care, they can be individuals, so they can just be individual customers. Okay. We're looking for service, product, solutions, as I said, that are design centered. So we're expecting businesses to have a design-centered approach to the products that they are developing. It could be an old technology or an existing solution that you're using in an innovative way. We're obviously still looking for innovation, but we aren't necessarily looking for very high-tech, clever products. This is much more about service-led businesses. You should have a clear route to market. And again, this is where social enterprises really excel. They know their market really well, and they usually have a clear route to market defined, and they normally understand that extremely well. And then the usual things that Innovate UK expects: you have to be sustainable, and you have to be thinking about scaling as well. You have to be thinking about how to grow your business and where you're going to grow your business. And if you don't have the capability to do it now, you have to have at least an idea of how you will do it and what you want to do. So the competition launched on the 19th of July. We've got 4 million in total across the whole programme. So 1 million is available for the smaller projects, and they will last up to 12 months, 25 to 50,000. And then we have the larger stream, which is 51 to 150,000. And this is prototyping, industrial research, and those projects can last up to 24 months. So we have quite a lot of definitions around our competitions, and for those of you who don't know us very well, we do have a lot of information on our web pages. So if you're not sure about where you fit, whether you're feasibility or whether you come under stream 2, then we do have a lot of information that will help you work that out as well. So it closes on the 15th of September at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's a very strict deadline. So if you submit after 11 o'clock, even 11:30, then you will not be eligible. We are expecting our projects to start March 2022 and finish by February 2024. And I'm just going to really quickly talk about investor partnerships, because you might be interested in this, you might be eligible for this as well, or you might know businesses outside of this call that could be eligible. So I'm working with a pool of commercial investors who are also investing in and funding businesses who are working in healthy aging. So we're working with some really good impact investors, as well as some more standard VC capital type of investors as well. It's a 50-50 project cost split. So 50% we provide through grants, and the rest is covered as private equity from the investor. We've got 6 funded projects to date, and they cover very high-tech genetic solutions to social care platforms, and also one of them is actually a social enterprise, a volunteering app for people who want to volunteer through their employers. So just to give you an idea of the range of companies that our investors are looking for, they tend to look for a little bit later stage. So, you would be expected to have some revenue, or be at least thinking about pre-revenue stages. And they are very interested to talk to you, even if you're not at that stage. So what I would say, if you think you're interested or you think you maybe fit the bill for some of these investors, please just let me know, and I can have a word with some of the investors, and you can talk to me about your projects and see if you would fit there as well. We're also launching another competition in September, which is a Designed for Aging competition. And again, from the title, you'll be able to tell this is about design-centered approaches to solutions for healthy aging. It's a larger competition, so slightly larger projects, but social enterprises would be eligible as well. So if anybody wants further information about that, I'll make sure that all the links are available after this webinar. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I think it's really exciting. I think we've been talking for a long time about kind of that sense of our population changing, and more, I guess, particularly I stay in a rural part of Scotland. We have quite a higher level of elderly population. I often joke that I've brought down the average age here in Dumfries and Galloway just by moving here, but it's a real challenge for some of our communities, I think, and particularly I see it in rural areas where we've got kind of that aging population kind of agenda really hits hard, I think. So really delighted to see that this fund's here, trying to look at those innovative approaches in terms of what do we do about that sense of an aging population. And I know here in Scotland as well, we've got a lot talked about in terms of kind of the loneliness a framework in terms of making sure people aren't lonely, which I guess is been made even tougher during the pandemic. So there's lots of issues around that kind of aging arena. I'm hopeful that people have got questions, because whenever there's a fund, there's usually questions in terms of the kind of things it can and can't cover. So, and forgive me if I'm asking you to repeat odd bits, but I think sometimes it's because I always think it's useful to hear it twice rather than not at all, in case people miss things. So are there any kind of costs that are classed as ineligible as part of this?
Yes, there will be, and I can't list them. So what I would say, to find out, what's eligible and what isn't, go to the website, and it's very, very clear what is considered eligible. Also, there was an applicant briefing on the 3rd of August, and on the competition page, there will be a link to that webinar. And that webinar is delivered by the competition management team. So a lot of those questions are answered in that webinar. So I could, suggest that you go and find that link and watch that webinar.
Great. We can perhaps send that out with a copy of your slides. If you send them on to me, we'll get the slides out to everyone that was on the session today, and we'll share the link at the same time. Just, albeit you haven't got the list, is it capital and revenue, or is it just one or t'other?
No, it's capital and revenue, but yep. There's a threshold around capital.
Okay.
I don't know what that threshold is.
That, I think it's just useful to know whether it's got kind of both those elements in or not. So yeah. If you want to know the detail, then it's worth checking. So I always say to people, it's amazing how many people apply for funds that haven't really looked at the FAQs in detail, and then you end up applying for something that that wasn't allowed either in terms of eligibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
Really always check the FAQs is always my top tip on any of these.
And also, sessions. What I would say is, even if you're not going to apply for this, or even if you're not sure you're going to apply for this, I would just log on, and if you can start an application, you don't have to submit it, but at least if you do it now, you're kind of ahead of the game. And I would also suggest you don't answer the questions sequentially. I would suggest you go through all of the questions and answer the most difficult ones first, which is usually around project costs. And that's where, we get the most questions generally.
Do you know, that's really helpful advice, because there's nothing more frustrating than going through the form and then you get to a bit and you're like, oh, we can't answer this bit. It doesn't do what we do, and you've wasted all that time leading up. So always, is there a way people can find out what all the questions are before they start the application?
No, the questions are in the application form, so you'd have to start.
You have to flick through.
You have to go through, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe do a quick run through.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine to do that, because even if you don't submit it because you realise you're not eligible or you don't fit the criteria, any unsubmitted applications are just deleted after the close of the competition. Also, you know, on the actual competition webpage, there's a competition overview. So that does touch on eligibility and scope, and there is some additional information on there as well.
Thank you, Helen. That's helpful. Someone's just asked this question, and it's obviously it's going to vary for different organisations, but if someone was looking to put in an application, how long does it usually take to go through on the form, assuming you have all the answers ready, I guess, which people generally probably won't have, even as well planned as we are. There's usually something we have to look up, but is it an hour to set aside? Is it?
No. I would set aside more than an hour. If you're experienced, if you know you've done it before and you've gone through the process before, then obviously it won't take you very long. If you've got all of the answers in front of you because you've done this before elsewhere, then again it won't take you very long. If you've never done it before, it can take hours.
Thank you. I appreciate that that honesty, because it's helpful for people to work out in terms of time, I think sometimes. What do you anticipate? And again, it's difficult until you've had a closing date. What do you think the interest has been so far? Do you think it's going to be quite competitive? My experience of Innovate funds is they usually are. There's some great projects that come out of them, but
yeah, I mean, you know, we've never done this before. It's the first time UKRI have supported social enterprise, so we are anticipating a lot of interest. This is my last webinar, so, you know, I've done the engagement part of it. We're up to 77 applicants already. So, you know, I was kind of anticipating around the 100 mark, and obviously, you know, there'll be at least 10% of those that aren't eligible for some reason or another. So yes, it's going to be competitive. We only have 4 million. But what I would say, you know, this is a pilot and people are watching, you know, watching us. So I'm very, very hopeful next year we are going to have some more funding that we can, you know, we can allocate to doing this again. So
great. And yeah, so I guess it's even if you may not be successful this time, hopefully the consequence of going down the application route and showing that the demand is there helps in terms of future rounds,
yeah, definitely,
or may help in terms of future rounds.
Help, yeah.
We can't say it will because we don't know whether there is one, but it can help. I think, having run funds in the past, I understand that kind of dynamic a little bit. Just in terms of, obviously this is new and social enterprise is new, but in terms of perhaps looking across other funds that have been run in the past, what tend to be the main reasons people get turned down? Is it simply that they're up against the competition of other bids in terms of the closeness on criteria?
It really varies. Scope, you know, if you're ineligible, you're ineligible. So obviously there are some reasons why a business is not eligible. If you're not a social venture, for instance, you will not be eligible. So, and if you are not covering one of the 7 themes, you will not be eligible. And then further down the line, you know, when it goes to assessment, then that is down to individual and independent assessors, and they are scoring the application by those questions. So they're given a criteria by which they score those questions, and you have to hit a 70% threshold. Now, those assessors don't know the quality of all the other projects, so they are just going to assess one project as it comes through, and then, you know, we might have to apply an interview process. We don't know yet. It really does depend on how many we get coming through, and, you know, which projects are, you know, it's the bigger and smaller projects. We're unlikely to interview the smaller projects, but again, if we get projects that are just under the 70% and we think that we need to dig deeper into that project because it's a really good project, then we will invite for interview. You know, quite often businesses, especially social enterprises, that there may be certain commercial aspects that they don't tick the traditional boxes for Innovate UK. It's hard sometimes to answer some of the questions. So, you know, that they can be an issue, but again, that's why we're having this 2-level approach where we might interview them. So if we think, you know, if we consider that they've answered every other question perfectly and it's just something around project management that's missing, then we might interview them.
Thank you. That's helpful to know. And I guess I always say to people as well, don't make assumptions. You know, if people are scoring, don't assume people already know about your project. They are literally going on what's written in your application form.
Yeah,
so
and it is, you know, there's a lot more to the story for this competition. So the story of your project, it's about social impact. It's about what we're trying to achieve. It's not about making lots of money, although, you know, we want you to make money because then you can put the money back into the business. But the assessors want to understand why you're doing it, you know, how you're doing it, and what its actual the end result will be. So that is much more important for this competition, I would say.
Yeah. And do all of the ideas that are coming in, do they, I mean, it's often a thing when people are going for funding, does it always has to be something that they've not done before in that it's completely new? Could it be a tweak in terms of an adaptation, or something that they are adding on in terms of an existing service?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. They can apply for funding for their existing project as long as they haven't applied for funding for that project before.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a brand new thing. It could be something they've been doing for years. They're doing it in a different way, as long as they haven't applied for funding for that particular project before. And obviously we are expecting a research element to this, a research and development element.
Yes.
There has to be a new element to it, if you like. You know, we're asking you to, you know, to develop it, take it further.
Absolutely. I mean, the essence of a lot of the programs is all about finding new approaches to things, isn't it? Whether that's in this instance, I guess, the healthy aging. So we're looking for I guess you're looking for projects that can instigate and lead other ideas in the future for replication. So it's always worth kind of bearing that in mind when you're looking at your project, I think, in terms of, is it something that could be replicated, and it drives things forward in a different way, because that always strikes me as a real essence of something that sits behind the funds that you announce.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking at the chat box. Someone asked if we could put the link in the chat box, which Duncan's done. So that's always quite good when there's questions have come in. There's always questions from people when there's funding. And one that hasn't come up, you talked about, obviously, it's for all social ventures. And obviously, taking the point that if you're needing to ask if you're a social venture, it's not for you, but we always get asked about legal structures. So obviously social enterprise in itself has a number of different legal structures that it could follow. So we very much take the view that kind of a social venture could be anything from that kind of registered charity, the company limited by guarantee, the community benefit society, but also the KIC model.
Yeah.
You've got that similar broad view in terms of it's all of those legal structures that can come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the criteria doesn't really talk about the legal side of things. We talk about, I mean, obviously we would expect a business to have objects within its documents, you know, a constitutional lot that's protecting the mission, those sorts of things. But yeah, all of those organisations are eligible to apply, as are, you know, local authorities. I mean, you know, and universities. So they all come under the same umbrella.
Yeah, it's that's the social venture and the broadness, isn't it, in terms of that understanding. So I just know it will come across, and we're still not sure whether we can apply as a KIC, because they tend to not always be able to apply to all funds. So in terms of whether an organisation needs a track record, obviously it's about new projects and ideas. Is it for new organisations, or is it for organisations that have a track record but are doing something new?
It can be for either.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to have a track record. You can be a new company, you know, if you're doing something innovative and, you know, you're ticking all those other boxes. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Thank you. I'm trying to think, what are all those questions that everyone's got on the tip of their tongues that they're not quite asking? In terms of the monitoring and reporting after an award, what would be involved in terms of that? Obviously, you've already said it's got an element of research involved, so there'll be that reporting back. Could you just expand a little bit just in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, it will be the same as all other Innovate UK projects. So you will be monitored by an independent monitoring officer, sorry. And, you know, the way it would work for a 1 year project will be different to the way it will work for a 2 year project, obviously, but they will monitor you in the same way. Also, the thing about SBRI, it's contract based, it's procurement. So your payments are milestone based. So when you actually answer the questions in the application around your project plan and your milestones, those milestones will be used to complete the payments as you hit each milestone. So it is different to a standard, funding competition. SBRI is different.
Thank you.
Lots of information on our websites to tell you how SBRI works and how that funding.
No, That's really helpful. So I'm thinking that through in terms of what you've just said. Does that mean that obviously people have to deliver the work and then they're paid based on meeting the milestones? So it's payment in arrears in effect?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously for organisations that are out there, you need to think of that in terms of cash flow and getting that right. And then the other point I just wanted to pick up, because obviously if it's contract based rather than seen as a grant, is the question I have in my mind is how is that then seen in terms of thinking VAT registration?
Oh, no, don't ask me about VAT registration. It's all, if you go on the web.
Look at the details.
Yeah, look at the details. That's all competition management. I just don't think about things like that.
That's absolutely fine, Helen. It's just as I'm thinking that if it's contract, not grant, it might have implications around VAT, and I don't know the answer as to whether it does or doesn't.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think you have to be VAT registered, but just, yeah.
Yeah, so it's worth just looking at the, like Helen says, go on the site, look at some of those details, because this is a great opportunity for organisations that really work in this field, but just understand what those dynamics are of the fund.
Don't exclude yourself before you've asked those questions, because I'm available. My email will be made available afterwards. Please just email me, and even if you think you're not eligible, just ask me the question and I'll help you find the answer.
That's super helpful, because it's quite I guess a new for some social enterprises out there coming into Innovate UK will be quite a unique experience. So it's not something they've done before. A question that has just come in, can intermediaries apply on behalf of their members? So if there were innovative kind of ideas that people had that might involve a couple of different organisations, is that something that people can do, or is it that the money has to go to the direct provider?
Yeah, there has to be a lead applicant, but you can obviously collaborate with as many partners as you want. In fact, we encourage you to collaborate. You do better if you collaborate and have more partners, but there has to be one lead applicant.
Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful. Just checking if there's any other questions that have come in. So
I did see one about the 7 themes and whether it's okay to work on 1 or 2, and absolutely it's fine. You can work on 1 as long as you are working within those 7 themes. And actually you could be working on something that impacts one of those 7 themes, so there might be a link from what you're doing to one of those 7 themes. So maybe just think a little bit creatively about it, but yeah, 1 is fine.
Thank you. You've prompted me, because there's a couple of questions that were right at the top of the chat list, which I'd missed because you were speaking, I think, when they came in. So there was that one there that actually is very much how would social enterprises working together be viewed? And I think you've obviously just said collaboration is seen quite strongly in the programme. So that's quite, I think hopefully we've covered that one. Noting obviously it's challenging sometimes to do collaboration in the time scales, but it can lead to more innovative solutions. So I think it's working that through. Would you expect, if people are coming in as partnerships, given the time scale, that they're all fully formed at the point of application, or could it be that there's a rough outline and it's kind of?
Yeah, I mean, that it's a good point, actually. Quite often, especially, you found this competition and think, actually, this project is well worth funding, and I haven't got the partner in place. Yeah, that's fine. You can apply with partners. I mean, even your collaborators, you might not have a collaborator, but you might know that you want a collaborator and it's going to cost you this much and this is what they're going to do. So you can put that in your project outline as well.
That's really helpful, because again, I think I'm always conscious that sometimes it can take quite a while to have detailed conversations. So I think knowing that people can do some of that detail once an application's gone in is incredibly useful to people.
Yeah.
I'm just scrolling back down the list now to check I haven't missed anything that has come in, just in case there's any kind of last questions. We've obviously shared the link in terms of to the blog that you wrote for us about the fund, which is great. It's really nice. So that will have more information.
I think my email's on there as well. I think it is. I think.
We will make sure it goes out with the slide set.
Yeah.
And if there's any questions, Helen, you've made yourself incredibly available, I guess, in terms of answering any of those questions or pointing people towards the answers. So that we've got that sense there. We've got the link out for people. I think it would be, we're obviously biased, it would be brilliant to get some great projects funded up here in Scotland.
It would, yeah, it would, which is, you know, I mean, thanks to Duncan that, you know, I've and yourself, I've managed to, I've done a lot of regional sessions just for that purpose. You know, we really want projects coming forward from Scotland, from Wales, from Ireland. It just doesn't seem to happen. And it's something, again, that I sort of became quite aware of quite early. And I think we need to look at ourselves and do things a bit differently. So yeah, please apply.
Yeah, no, it'd be brilliant. Straight away, I mean, I think of an organisation that I know that, I mean, they set up a care home in a local village because until the social enterprise was set up that enabled that, once people hit a certain age, they suddenly had to move 50 miles away from family because it was the only place care was available. So there's some, you know, there's some great examples up here in Scotland of where that innovation has taken place to enable people to carry on living in their local community for as long as they can. So these are real challenges that we find, particularly I think in some of our rural areas as well. So I would love to think you'll get some real innovation coming from projects across Scotland as part of this competition. Your email is in the blog. Duncan's checked.
Great.
This is why it's always handy. Thank you, Duncan, for checking all of that in the background. Great to know. And unless there's any last questions, I'm going to perhaps draw the session to a close. There's lots of advice out there in terms of going for this fund. Do really read the FAQs before you go for it. Flick through the form. Helen's advice on going to the more difficult questions first is incredibly valuable. I think it's always nice to start with the kind of filling in your name and organisation, but if you then get to the difficult parts that you can't do, you've wasted your time. So it's definitely worth flicking through that application first. It's a great opportunity. I would say don't be put off by going for something that's quite new. I think obviously this is the first time if you've done something targeted for social enterprise, you know, it's going to be a case of working with people once they're selected, working through the monitoring officer that you suggested, Helen, and getting all of that right. So I think you're wanting great applications. So ask if there's any questions. Don't let the forms be a barrier. There's no such thing as a daft question. I always say at these webinars.
Absolutely. Especially for Innovate UK. Because a lot of it isn't clear, you know. I have to be very honest about Innovate UK. Some of the ways it works, it is not clear. So yeah, please just ask the questions.
Absolutely. And again, I would also say if this is the first time a social enterprise fund's been targeted, there may well be questions that until you start running a fund haven't become obvious. So if it's not clear, just ask, because actually you could be helping shape the way future information comes out by simply asking the questions. So, you know, I think it's brilliant that we're seeing this kind of targeted social enterprise approach. So I really hope as a result of this, you'll see some good applications from Scotland. We'll get the word out a bit more as well. Obviously, we've put the blog out. We'll make sure it's in our bulletin. So I think this is a great opportunity for organisations. So no more questions have come in while I've been wittering on, which is, I don't witter on just for the sake of it. I like to think it's giving people the chance to think, oh, she's not asked that, but nothing else has come through. So I'd just like to say thank you, Helen. I actually think one of the real benefits of going online is that we do get to hear from speakers like yourself about these kind of programs that are UK wide, but getting that access and that information out to all of our communities here is really important. So I'd like to say a big thank you for you joining us today. Thank you for Duncan for asking Helen as well. It's good to have someone who's on the lookout for speakers and new ideas. So
yeah. And thank you very much for having me. I couldn't do it without, you know, without all of this support, I wouldn't be able to deliver. So yeah.
Brilliant. And if you send the slides over to me, we'll get them out to all applicants, and that would be fabulous. And have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hope the sun comes out.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Thanks, Helen.
Bye.